welcome everyone to the afternoon session at Comms Hero. I am very excited to be here and introducing our speaker for this next session. I'm Carly and I'm normally behind the scenes working with Resource on these events, but they let me loose, so I'll be hosting some of the sessions this week. I hope you had a great morning and really enjoyed the content. I found it really helpful. And before I introduce our wonderful speaker today, I've just got a few housekeeping things that if you've been here this morning, you can probably reel them off by heart already. So please use the emojis, because we all know that virtual events need some emoji interaction. So go wild with the emojis. And if you need automated subtitles, there is a button here that says CC. Click on that and you'll get some subtitles. Excuse, I've got a resident fly with me today. And the final thing is, please do use the chat function on the right hand side, and please ask questions, because we'll have a Q&A at the end, and have a look and see if there are any polls for you to join in on. So I'm delighted to welcome Matt Batten with us this afternoon. Matt is the Director of Comms and Engagement for the Llandaff Diocese in Wales. We've just found out that my nan lived on the same housing estate as Matt. So what are the chances? We're not going to be talking about that today. Matt is going to be speaking about fast-tracking a digital strategy. I can sympathise with Matt, because up until 3 months ago, I was working for a church and getting Sunday services online every week. So Matt is a pro at that. He's a pro at fast tracking, getting people onto digital. So I'm really excited to introduce Matt Batten. So please show him some love.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone, and so diolch yn fawr, prynawn da, dwi'n byw yng Nghaerdydd, I live in Cardiff, and just before this session I had to go around the house and close all the windows because I live near a petrol station, and the noise, the honking of the horns and the shouting, and the poor guy on the tannoy who has been doing this since 5:30 this morning, because I live that close, and when the window open I can hear him shouting, £30 only, people, no, not 40, 30. That's all I've heard. So yeah, I've got to close all my windows in case you think that there's some sort of fight and I live in the rough part of Cardiff. So it's not always like this in Cardiff. I actually love Cardiff. And Carly's nan lived here as well. So literally, Bearsy friends right now. Okay, so I work for the Church in Wales, and I work for the Diocese of Llandaff. Now, the Diocese of Llandaff is a section of the Church in Wales, which is basically the South Wales area. So it covers all of Cardiff, and it also covers the South Wales valleys as well. So it's probably the most populous of all the dioceses in the Church in Wales, but also there's lots of areas of poverty, but also areas of quite wealthy, quite rich people. But we all had the same challenges during COVID, during lockdown, and that was simply that the church is closed. And for many people, that was the first time in living memory that they closed. And it was a huge shock, because this has not happened before, and it was a real learning curve for me, who'd just been in post, I think, about 8 months. I wasn't quite expecting this in my first couple of months in post. But hey, you know, you live through it, you survive, and I learned some really good lessons, which I'm really hoping I can share with you today. So first of all, comms of praise. I was really thrilled that I came up with this, and I came up with this after a glass of wine. So I'm really chuffed with this phrase. I'm just going to leave it on my screen for as long as possible, because I think it's genius. The situation that we found ourselves in, and we're talking about fast tracking a strategy, a digital comms strategy. The reason for this is the situation we found ourselves in. As I said, church buildings were closed. Now, this happened, if you look back 18 months or so, this happened just before Holy Week. And there are two really big periods in the annual year of the church. Christmas is one of them, which is a really happy occasion. And then Holy Week and Easter is another one, which is really sad because Jesus died. But plot twist, guys, he did come back. So we're really happy with that. So that's great news. It didn't spoil anything. But it happened right by Holy Week. So suddenly all our churches closed, where we would probably get a lot of visitors, people who go to church all the time and people who haven't been to church for a long time coming through. That also impacts on money as well, because we're very much an organization that is cash based. People give money when they come to church. So we are essentially 10 years behind the times. I'm probably being generous when I say that. Now, I love the church and I love my job, but we were never really a digital focused organization. We never had to be, if I'm really honest. And one of the things when I joined 2 years ago was these phrases that were just kept getting thrown at me all the time were, but our people aren't online. Well, they might not have been then, but here comes COVID and suddenly realizing we hadn't future proofed. We hadn't future proofed. So half of my comm strategy was just looking at the here and now and reacting, but also thinking, I don't really want to be in this position again. So how do we future proof what we're doing to ensure if something like this happens again, we're not in that same position? Our people aren't online. Their family and their friends are online. So we have to go where our people are and we have to serve where they are. Lots of people were talking about online church as if they'd never ever heard of it. Well, one thing I always say is the disabled community knew about online church because they were there every week. We just didn't serve them. And that's the really harsh reality. COVID made us realize there is a community of people we were not serving. So digital ministry, mate, never heard of it. Online church, nah, not for me. Well, it is for quite a lot of our audience, actually, for the elderly who can no longer come to church. Why were we not serving them in the first place? So that was the situation that we found ourselves in. And the other bit that was a big impact as well was people don't give money online because we are so used to people coming in and putting money in the plate. We hadn't thought about the financial impact. So I wanted to give you this situation because I wanted to illustrate that in a job like this, when you work for the church, every single thing, and you'll experience it as well in your roles, everything that you do in comms impacts every part of the business, every part of the organization, from what I work and do with finance to how I work and what I do with clergy and our volunteers. It's a huge impact that was exacerbated by COVID and lockdown. So what I was forced to look at in terms of my whole comm strategy, which I pretty much had to rip up and start again, was how do you upskill an entire workforce and lead an organization through a time of major upheaval, particularly a workforce and an organization that until I'd started hadn't seen value in digital. It was really tough my first 3 months in this post where I was trying to do more digital and people were like, we don't want it, we just want our newsletters. And you know what? You then have to cram everything you've done into an 18-month period or we're not going anywhere. It's online or bust in some occasions. So here are 4 things that I did, and these are 4 things that I think are really good lessons that all comms professionals and comms heroes can take on board. Okay, 4 things that I did to really push a digital comm strategy was the first thing I did was needed to become part of the community I serve. It's really important to know your audience. It's really important to understand the language that they use. The reason I've put become part of the community I serve is because servanthood is a big part of the church and you have to understand the value base and the culture of a place that you work in order to deliver comms that have an impact. There's no good me talking about advocacy, even though I've put it on here, or talking about, just communications. I'm here to serve the people who serve our communities, and that grounds me in my role. I'm here also to understand how you cut the noise. There was so much being thrown around, from guidance on how to do Zoom, guidance on how to do live streaming, guidance from the Welsh Government on what churches are allowed and not allowed to do. I had to really focus on what was the most important thing that my audience needed to know about. The linking to that is knowing your channels. And I think during this whole period, if there's one thing that I would always advocate, is having a channels strategy, a channels matrix. Because if you don't know where your people are, you're going to find it very difficult to cut through the noise and serve your community. And also, I had to focus on advocacy, not a word I would use outside of this audience, but very much something that I needed to think about in terms of clergy share a lot of stuff that we put out because they don't have the time and resources. So they're actually doing the work for me. And it's a really important part of my comm strategy. Let's break that down into a couple of things that I think are worthwhile highlighting. How do you become part of the community you serve? Do you know what? The one bit of advice I've always had in my career is always know what is keeping your audience awake at night. Now, there is only one thing on our audience's mind at that point, was how the bleeding hell do you do church online? That is the only thing people were thinking about. How do you live stream on a shoestring? I've literally got a phone and that's it. Some of the services that were done during that first week, very rough and ready. But you know what? It was all about encouragement. It was all about me understanding what can I do to make their life easier. They wanted to know how to live stream. So my entire comms over that period was essentially how-to guides, was essentially Zoom training courses, was essentially just infographics that broke things down into really simple steps. Because our core business is ministry. That's what we're here to do. We are here to share the good news of the gospel. That may make you feel uncomfortable with me using religious language, but what I'm saying is, if you don't know what the core of your business is, then you won't be able to align your strategy with what people need you to deliver. My role is about how I can make their lives easier and what keeps them awake at night. COVID guidance, online training to deliver live stream services, because it's core to our business. I was really part of the community in so much that probably worked a lot of hours, but I was so invested in how proud I felt of the people who were putting on church services. I've never done this before. I watched as many church services as I could, and I got to share this with you because, as much as you can, put out the guidance and put out all the best practice that you are in the world, you have to remember mistakes are going to happen. And by being part of that community, I saw those mistakes and I shared them, because being part of that community means you're there with them when things don't go right. There was Father Andrew, who did a Eucharist, which is like the holiest moment in the service, holds up the wafer and says, behold the Lamb of God, and his iPad fell over. I mean, it's genius, because we've all been there. We've all had those things happen to us. So I snipped that out and shared it with his permission, because we've all been there, and it's funny, actually. If you can't laugh at this stuff, then you haven't got a sense of humor. Or when I was filming the bishop, like the head of the organization, and a dog comes jumping across the camera and barks around her, and I shared that online, because we've all made these errors. We've all been part of those awkward moments online. It can't always be po-faced. You've got to be in on the joke with your community. We've all done it, and it's amazing to share. So how do you cut the noise? Well, it was a lot of reaction, as you know what it was like. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys what it was like at that time. It was stuff being thrown left, right, and center. Communicate this, communicate that. Can you put something on the website because we think it might be needed? The phrase I probably used the most is, not everything is a priority, boss. not everything is a priority, Bishop. And honestly, if Jesus came down from heaven and sat next to me at that time, I'd be saying, mate, not everything is a priority, because you cannot do everything. And if you start chucking more and more stuff at people when you've already done your homework and you've found out the one thing that is keeping them up at night is they just want to do a church service online so that they can reach people, or they just want to know, with no money, how can they do a digital newsletter? And it's my job to answer those questions. And right then, nothing else mattered. It didn't matter about any other thing that was going on, about serving the people that needed this information. Cut the noise, start saying no to things that are not going to answer that one question, which is what is bothering people right now. And I learned the hard way to say no, because I used to be a real people pleaser. You know, when you're just starting off in a job, you just want everyone to think you're amazing. But it got to COVID and you just can't do it. You just got to say no. And at the time, it's a team of me. We had someone else as well join us a bit later on, but you can't prioritize everything. So cut the noise, turn it down, focus on your audience. Even if the boss tells you something else is important, just you trust yourself. You know your audience better than anyone else. Knowing your channels, right? This was so important for me. 18 months into a job, really needing to know, where are my people at? This isn't my full sort of channels matrix, but I just wanted to give you an example of how this looked like. So knowing my audience was, my audience are churchgoers. They're not in the building now, so where are they? Of a certain age, shall we say, our church-going audience, certain age, they're on Facebook. They really are on Facebook. And I know that because I look at the stats, and we do really well on Facebook with a certain audience. They're all on email. They are looking at our website and they access church newsletters, which at the time were being posted through their door. So knowing that where those church goers were, I was able to target information to them. That was things like, how do you get on Zoom? How do you how do you find your church's live stream on YouTube? All that kind of stuff that I was aiming for my church goers, so that they could see that the bishop was going to have a message go on live on Facebook and make sure they could find it. They want to know things about good news stories of impact. It was a really tough couple of months. So my job was to find the really good news stories. One amazing story I've got to share was Mothers Union, which, if you know who Mothers Union are, a lot of our much older members join Mothers Union, which is a charity group, and they do a lot of good support work. They worked with the Welsh Government and Digital Cooperative in Wales to run a project on helping older people get online during the pandemic. And it really helped shift the conversation from, our people are not online, to, no, but they are now, because the older people, the peers who are in Mothers Union, are helping them get online. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous story when you see that they're online because they want to see their grandkids. And it's beautiful. And we told those stories to our churchgoers. People like our treasurers, they're on our emails, they're on our website, and they go to church. One of the best things ever for us was email marketing. Seriously, it's never going to go out of fashion, I don't think. We did Llandaff Matters, which is our Friday e-newsletter. It went out every week, and I was so strict on the content that was being put in there. It had to add value to the conversation. I would put on there the things that we did around training, short, sharp blogs for treasurers on how do you start doing digital giving online? How do you do text to give so you can drop that into a Facebook Live church service? Little things like that that people didn't know about, that I was able to use our comms channels to add value so that they could then do what they're volunteering to do in the church, just slightly differently. Clergy are all over the place, and I'm not going to go through everything, but two things I'm going to highlight. Twitter is the best internal comms channel for me. They are all on Twitter, and so are the agencies that we work with. As soon as I knew that, I start using Twitter for internal content and training and messages that I'm aiming for clergy. Peer stories do really well because clergy like to know what other churches are doing. Bit of nosiness, bit of, let's keep an eye on the opposition. But having those peer stories of how other clergy are doing things really help move forward our digital comms strategy, because they started to help each other along the way. In fact, I would say after about 9 months, it was less about me, more about me now showing what clergy are doing, because they were doing it far better than I was. It just means it took a lot of my workload, being able to share what they were doing. I mentioned this before on, I think it was a CIPR conference, that I use Facebook as a comms channel, and I don't mean the public page one. I use my own Facebook. I have a friends list of people who are clerics and who work in the same organization I do, and I put out more relaxed kind of comms, shall we say, as another way of reaching them. And it's really helped me build up a close relationship with the people that I'm serving. Obviously not going to post pictures of me out on the lash, but I will post more, informal content on there that is kind of giving the messages that I want them to hear. Bit naughty, but one does what one can when you're under pressure, right? Okay. And our leadership team meetings, teams, I just had to put out real facts and figures for them. They just wanted to know the bottom line. Our church is going bust. That's what kept them awake at night. So I was making sure they knew how to use Teams. We all were able to meet once a week, and I would just focus it on, let's do facts, let's do figures, let's check in on each other, so that they felt informed and essentially then felt that they were a bit more in control of what was going on. Advocacy in the church matters. I wouldn't use the word advocacy, but I talk about us being a service. I want to put out content that inspires, because when you put out content that inspires, it means clergy will do what you're asking them to do. They will then start doing online church services, or they will then start doing Zoom, or they will then start doing text to give. When you find the stories of churches that had, like, £1,000 in over a month because they did text to give, or they did PayPal payments, it means that money was then being used to, give extra to food banks or something. And it's that kind of story that really inspires. Content that we put out is shareable, because our clergy have never been trained on digital. They don't know about Canva. They've started to use it, but at that point, it was, how can we make the content that they share? And by them sharing it means we're reaching into the community, because they are sharing the content that is inspiring other people. And the other bit about advocacy, by getting our audience to share our content, means we reach a much wider community base. When parishioners who've got friends and families and work colleagues in the community and in the audience start sharing our content about food banks, about period poverty, for example, that we do a lot on. We are the biggest voluntary organization in this area. So knowing that means our content for some people is a lifeline. So we have to make sure that as many people see it as possible. We can't put posters up in churches like we would normally do. So we have to make the content shareable in various formats: online, in person, face to face, messages that resonate. And that is my role in making sure content is relatable, shareable, inspires, and becomes a lifeline for people in need, that they can find that help in the church that they go to. Some of the tactics, and I'm very aware that I'm going to be running over, but I want to take some questions. Some of the tactics that we use were, when I first joined, we just used Microsoft Sway because it was free. By using Microsoft Sway because it was free, I did have a budget for other stuff, and we now use Campaign Monitor. But churches now use Microsoft Sway because it's free. They don't have a huge budget, but they've now pivoted from paper to Microsoft Sway, which is, if you've got the Microsoft suite, it's like a newsletter creator, which you can then, file print into PDF. So that's helped them. And I was able to use it to show you don't need a lot of money to do some of this stuff, guys. You can reach out your audience, and there's free stuff out there. We use a lot of graphics and images, you know, Unsplash, Undraw is a good one, the Noun Project, free stuff that I can say to churches, you can use this stuff on a budget. Canva for not-for-profit, you know, is just amazing for our churches, and they've started to use it. We use Lumen 5 to put out prayer videos, because prayer is such an integral part of our audience, and not just putting out training about Zoom, but putting out prayers that say, you know, about digital giving is about generosity, and then one of our priests will write a prayer around it. It means I know that my audience is going to resonate better when it's couched in spirituality. And KineMaster is my favorite video app, and I would just get people to WhatsApp me messages that I could share online, which was just an absolute godsend. I used Headliner as well, which I love, because I was getting people to WhatsApp me audio messages and turn that into thank you messages for our core audience. Thank you to clergy from the bishop for all the hard work that they've done, which just meant that I could put out these little audiograms on social, or to our church-going community, I could get the bishop to WhatsApp me a quick video that she's done and put it in KineMaster and use all the alt tags and the subtitles to reach a much wider audience. And all along, I was using things like Microsoft Forms to get feedback, so that I knew every step of the way what more I needed to do, what more information that they needed that could then help them, because knowing your audience is incredibly important to the stuff that we did. I'm looking at the time, and I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to take questions. But those are the 4 things that I did. It all comes down to knowing your audience and understanding what kept them awake at night and what they need from you, so that you can serve them, so that they can serve their community as well. So I'm going to stop there and happily take some questions from you. Okay. Do we have any questions?
Oh, here I am. Sorry, guys. I think my internet is having some trouble. Hopefully you can hear me. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? I think it's gone a bit laggy. Right. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that little delay. Matt, that was so helpful. Thank you so much.
No problem.
I think a lot of us are going to be wanting to go back and replay that, because there were so many incredible nuggets there for communicators to take away and apply in their organizations. I think obviously all organizations had to shift last year, but I think the church really had a lot of work to do. And so, yeah, no, it was so helpful to hear about getting into the community and really understanding your audience. So thank you so much. I think there are a couple of questions. So one thing I wanted to ask was that obviously at the start of the pandemic, the church suddenly realized that there were a lot of people that we hadn't been reaching because we were online. And so I just wondered, now that things are going back to in-person meetings and things are starting to get back to, quote, normal life, how are you still serving that community, people that are able to...
It's a really good point. I mean, before we didn't have a budget for digital, you know, so it was always a bit of a fight to get money for live streaming. Whereas now we've put money aside for churches to basically get funding so that they can continue doing live services in their community, because actually people realize there's disabled people who can't get to church because our buildings are not, you know, often accessible. So we've put money aside, and it's been really brilliant to see that continuing and being taken up. And live stream now, I think, has just become exactly what we're always going to be doing. You know, we don't all need to do it, but the churches who are continuing it are doing it really, really well, but they've upped their skill and they've got volunteers, all the things that before COVID didn't think that was possible. So we are reaching a much bigger audience than we ever did.
Great, that's really good. So there's a great question here from Kate Jones, which is something that I'd not actually considered. She says, tell me about the challenges of needing to communicate in more than one language, and how did you manage this?
OMG, that is a brilliant question. Okay, so dwi'n dysgu Cymraeg ar hyn o bryd, so dwi ddim yn rhugl. I'm not fluent, but I'm learning Welsh. And in Wales, you know, we don't have to communicate in Welsh, but then you're not serving a community. So the challenges are, you've got to find a translator. So things go a bit slower. But we're very fortunate. We have a Welsh language church, Eglwys Dewi Sant, in Cardiff. Now I can speak a bit of Welsh, so I can do some of that. But when you're translating, you're always thinking about a week or two ahead of yourself. You know, news stories, sometimes you've just got to say, I'm just going to have to put it out there in English and then catch up in Welsh another time. But then there are some really important stuff that we would make sure is bilingual. So guides that we would put out, or anything from the Welsh Assembly. There's no good just putting the link to the English bit of it, knowing that your audience want to read it in Welsh. So your newsletter in some respects, has that extra column where you've got your information in English, you've got your information in Welsh as well. But essentially, Kate, it does come back to knowing who your audiences are and knowing who in the diocese is speaking Welsh and what churches do they go to, because that's your core audience that you will then need to speak to. But yeah, dwi'n hoffi siarad Cymraeg.
We need some translation going on there on this. I think it's really important. It's just being considerate, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's about that you're serving and what they need, because that helps them to engage more in the content. There's a great question here from Ross Ironfield. He says, can you tell us a bit more about data protection concerns? We had people worried about being on camera on Zoom. Some of the services were shared on YouTube. Similarly, did you have any problems getting people to sign up to receive emails?
Oh, that is such a good question. It's like, Ross, you totally know what my pain was like for the last 18 months. Right, in terms of emails, no, we didn't actually get people, we didn't actually have much of a problem. Now, just to let you know, our open rates for Llandaff Matters is 70%. And we've probably got about, I don't know, 2,000-3,000 people. It is a really, mainly because I'm so careful what goes in there. It is all killer, no filler. It has to be. I'm not going to put someone's got a tombola on Saturday, would you like to come and visit it? No. But I'm going to put the most important stuff that people need to read that week and make sure that it's constantly got good content in there. We did lots of stuff of encouraging people to sign up, but I also know that there are priests who just copied and pasted from that email and put it into their own email. It does, excuse my language, bugger around with my stats, but at the same time, I'm like, you know what? If it means those people are getting the information, all right, I'll swallow it down. But everything we did was, for more information, sign up to Llandaff Matters. In terms of privacy, yeah, definitely. We just had to start creating posters and to say people, this is going to be live streamed. If you don't want to be on or caught on camera or whatever, perhaps not as threatening as that, please sit over this side of the church, that sort of thing. With Zoom, we quickly realized people do want us to replay Zoom meetings. I mean, why they do, and training sessions. So we swapped to webinars so that just the people who were on screen at the time, it just meant we were able to share things a bit wider that way, and people didn't have to worry. Oh, I think you've broken up a bit. Sorry, I didn't hear you then. You were probably reading out one of the questions. I mean, just to help you out, because I can't hear you. There's one here that says, how did you coach others to understand?
So helpful. Thank you, Matt. We have a few more questions, but we have run out of time. So people will have to come back and listen again. Oh dear, sorry.
Not to worry.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm going to turn my video off and see if that helps.
No worries.
Because my internet's being quite laggy. So, sorry, I was just saying that we need to wrap up. So there's lots of great questions, but people can listen back to this session and take their notepads and write some more helpful notes. So just to bring things to a close, everyone will have heard about the competition. So please take a photo of yourself at a networking table and post it with the hashtag #CommsHero. We're going to have prizes every day: 2 packs of Sharpies, a daily diary, some pets at vouchers, and an Amazon £30 gift voucher. So there's some great things up for grabs there. But thank you so much, Matt.
No problem.
Hi, Matt. Sorry, everyone. It looks like Carly's internet connection is playing up there. But Matt, that was fantastic. So I just wanted to jump on to say thank you.
No worries.
From everyone, because we enjoyed that session. Will you be around on the tables later in the social lounge?
Definitely.
Brilliant. So everyone can jump on there to have a chat with you when we go to sessions. Lovely. Thank you. And thank you, Carly, as well.